Hi, I'm Carrie. I miscarried at 8 weeks in May of 2013. It was with our first pregnancy, and I have 2 little boys now. I started to have some bleeding, so I went to the doctor and they sent me in for an emergency ultrasound. When they checked the baby, they said the baby looked okay and the heartbeat was strong, so maybe it wasn't anything to worry about. So I went home, and over the next couple of days I started to have some pains and I knew something wasn't right. So I went back to the doctor, and at that point they told me what my body was going through a miscarriage and that I would come back in a week to see how things had progressed. So over the next week I prayed really hard that God would save my baby's life. And I thought that if I prayed enough, He would hear my prayers and answer them. So I was hoping that when I went back in a week that there would be a miracle and that the baby would still be there and that the heartbeat would be strong. But that wasn't the case. So when the doctor told me the news, I felt like a failure, that I wasn't able to successfully carry my baby. And I felt extreme sadness that we weren't going to be able to start our family as we had planned. So through the next couple of weeks, I'd gone through a lot of sadness and depression and just a lot of crying at night in my bed by myself quietly, and it was a very lonely process because I felt like I was the only one who had ever known this individual who I was grieving over, and so I couldn't share that with anybody. Not to the depth that anybody would actually understand what I was going through. I felt like I was the only one who had ever known the person that I was grieving. So throughout that time, I was confused and I was frustrated with God, and I didn't understand why He let this happen. And I didn't understand why He didn't answer my prayers, because I know He's able to, and I wanted Him to. And throughout that process I learned to full submission to God, and that He's in control, and that for better or for worse I had to submit to His plan for my life, because His ways are higher than our ways, His thoughts are greater than ours. Throughout the process of grieving and healing, there were a couple of verses in Job that I really clung to. And in the Bible, Job is leading a very blessed life, but then he comes upon really hard times and is struck with major turmoil. He goes through physical battles. He loses his children and his land and everything that's near and dear to him. But whenever he comes upon these times where he loses everything, Job's wife turns to him and says, you should curse God and die. Basically saying, look at all this that He's put you through. How can you still be serving Him? And Job says to her, should we accept good from God and not trouble? His faith was steadfast, and he wasn't wavering based on his circumstance and the faith that he had put in God. And then later on in Job, he also says, God giveth and God taketh away. And that verse rang so true to me whenever I had my other 2 boys, that I was blessed and God had given me them, but God had taken one of my children from me too. But those verses help me to understand what it means to fully surrender and submit our lives to a God who is good and who has greater plans for us and greater purposes, and works all things out for the good of those who love Him. So that was my hope. Another realization that I had throughout the process is I was sitting on my couch nursing my second baby, and something came on the TV about miscarriages or somebody losing their baby during pregnancy, and I started crying, and I surprised myself that I was crying, that I was still hurting after I had already had 2 healthy babies. And I guess that was the first time that I fully realized the reason I was still hurting is it wasn't about having a baby, it was about that baby. And that baby was an individual, and that baby was a part of our family. It wasn't about just having a baby, because I had 2 healthy children, but I had another child, too. My advice to any woman who is going through a miscarriage or has gone through one would be to reach out to other women who have also experienced that, because it is hard to relate to the pain that you're feeling if you haven't ever experienced it yourself. It's something that is kind of unique, and it's difficult for others to relate to because they don't understand how you can have such sadness and grief for a baby that you only carried for a couple of weeks and you never actually met and made memories with and named or even knew if it was a male or a female. So because of that, I think so often we don't acknowledge the pain that women are going through when they experience a miscarriage, and it is a real loss and it is real grief, and there's no shame in feeling that way. So I think it's important to reach out to other women who have also gone through it so they can help you understand that it's normal to feel that way and it's healthy, and that you have a right to grieve your baby and you have a right to feel sadness for that loss. And it is important and it is significant. But it's just hard for other people to see that if they haven't gone through it themselves.